This is the University of Texas at El Paso. Founded in 1913, it is the second oldest academic institution within the University of Texas system. Commonly referred to as UTEP, the university is located in far west Texas on the Rio Grande at the historic Paso del Norte, or Paso of the North, an all-season pass and crossroads to several of the oldest highways in North America. UTEP bills itself as the nation's leading Hispanic-serving university and is the only top-tier American research university located on an international border. At the heart of the university's campus, nestled among southwestern desert landscaping and bucolic Bhutanese revival architecture, is Centennial Plaza. Constructed in 2014 to honor the university's first century, it's also home to several monuments. One of these monuments, a historical marker, is located on the north end of the plaza, just beneath the flagpole. The university installed the plaque in 1989 to commemorate its 75th anniversary. The marker tells a creation story. It begins with this claim. The University of Texas at El Paso traces its history to April 16, 1913, when the Texas legislature approved the creation of a state school of mines and metallurgy. This is a perfectly plausible creation story. Only this never happened. UTEP's creation story begins on January 14, 1913. Elected representatives from across Texas gathered in Austin, the state capital, for the 33rd regular session of the legislature, as they had done every 2 years since the Lone Star State declared independence from Mexico in 1836. On that day, legislators swore in new members, organized their respective chambers, elected chaplains, and after 6 p.m., adjourned for the day. We know all of this since both houses meticulously recorded their day-to-day activities in journals. Throughout January, the legislature submitted their proposed laws for consideration. On January 28, 1913, El Paso State Senator and native West Texan Claude Hudspeth introduced Senate Bill number 183. His bill called for the establishment of a mining school in El Paso. This was not Hudspeth's first attempt at creating a school of mines. 2 years earlier, during the legislature's 32nd regular session, he had introduced a nearly identical bill. His 1911 bill received little support in the House of Representatives due in large part to opposition from El Paso's representative in the House, William McGowan. McGowan was a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, class of 1889. As with most alumnus, he believed there should only be one state university in Texas. He shared this view with William Burgess, a fellow class of 1889 alumnus and El Paso attorney. Burgess also served on the university's Board of Regents. Burgess called establishing a school of mines in El Paso a mistake. Without their backing, Hudspeth's mining bill died without a vote. For those supporting an El Paso mining school, 1913 would be different. In June the previous year, William McGowan died. His death paved the way for Richard Burgess, El Paso's popular city attorney, to replace McGowan in the Texas House. Burgess was recognized throughout the West as an expert on conservation, irrigation, and mining policy. He even met with President Theodore Roosevelt to discuss conservation in the West. Unlike his older brother, William Burgess, Richard Burgess had not attended the University of Texas at Austin. Richard Burgess was an Aggie, having studied at the Agricultural and Mechanical College of Texas, today's Texas A&M University. At the time of his election, Richard Burgess represented the fastest-growing city in the Lone Star State. In less than a decade, El Paso's population had more than doubled to 40,000 inhabitants. By 1913, El Paso ranked with Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Fort Worth in both size and political clout. To boost their case for a mining school, El Pasoans pledged to donate land and buildings for a new school. Henderson Van Surdam, the superintendent of the financially insolvent El Paso Military Institute, proposed selling the school's campus to them for use as a state mining school. Seeking political support for the idea, Van Surdam traveled to Austin to meet with Governor Oscar Colquitt. Colquitt agreed to Van Surdam's plan, provided the superintendent could enlist the support of El Paso's delegation. On Van Surdam's return to El Paso, he met with Senator Claude Hudspeth and the newly elected state representatives Richard Burgess and Eugene Harris. The legislators pledged their support to Van Surdam's plan. Given El Paso's connection to the mining industry, Hudspeth, Burgess, and Harris secured appointments to their respective legislative committees on mining. Freshman Representative Richard Burgess was even named chair of the House Mining Committee. It would be these mining committees and not the committees on education that would decide the bill's fate. This meant the president of the University of Texas, Sidney Mezes, and the university's Board of Regents would have no direct input on the bill, even though the bill placed the new school under their control. With the attention of the University of Texas focused elsewhere, the Senate unanimously passed Senate Bill number 183 on March 12, 1913. 14 days later, on March 26, 1913, the House of Representatives passed the bill. With this act, the legislature created the State School of Mines and Metallurgy. The bill, however, was not yet law, as the Texas Constitution required Governor Oscar Colquitt to approve or veto the bill. The residents of El Paso, nonetheless, cheered the news. They sent congratulatory telegrams to Richard Burgess, whose adept handling of the bill allowed it to sail through the legislature. There were those in El Paso, however, who did not celebrate the bill's passage. One was Robert Holliday, an attorney and future University of Texas regent. The other, of course, was Richard Burgess's brother, William. Both William Burgess and Robert Holliday never made their opposition to the school public. Ironically, both men would later have buildings on the UTEP campus named after them. Upon learning of the bill's passage, William Burgess telegraphed UT President Sidney Mezes. He asked Mezes to persuade the governor to veto the bill. Mezes explained to the regent that it was too late. The El Paso delegation had already secured the governor's support. Regarding the establishment of the University of Texas at El Paso, Mezes said, "Maybe it will turn out better than we had expected." 1 year later, Mezes would be appointed UTEP's first president. On April 1st, 1913, the 33rd legislative session of both the House of Representatives and Senate ended, and the legislators left town. 3 weeks later, on the evening of April 16, 1913, Governor Oscar Colquitt, alone in his study, approved Senate Bill 183, creating what is today known as the University of Texas at El Paso. The evidence establishing April 16, 1913 as the university's creation date is well supported. It's just a question of who did the actual creating. The historical record as established through primary sources show the governor approved the bill on April 16, 1913, and not the legislature. So how did the University of Texas at El Paso, a top-tier research university, get its own history so wrong? Many institutions of higher education struggle reconciling their public history with their publicity. Public histories explain the past, while publicity invents a past. In UTEP's case, the creation story was invented due to a lack of sound research. To help us better understand what happened, we can construct a historiographical sketch. Historiographical sketches play an important role in scholarly research by reconstructing how historical narratives were produced and disseminated in the first place. They also help us identify the strengths and weaknesses of different historical interpretations. UTEP's historiographical sketch begins with the earliest written history recounting the creation of the University of Texas at El Paso. This can be found in its first academic catalog, published in 1915, a mere 2 years after the university's creation. Writing of the school's creation, the catalog said, "The 33rd Legislature of the State of Texas at its regular session in 1913 passed an act creating a state school of mines and metallurgy to be located at El Paso." This claim of the school's founding is well supported by primary source artifacts from the time. Unfortunately, this first history did not include dates. Subsequent academic catalogs published annually through the 20th century used similar language, each omitting the creation date. In 2000, the university switched from printed catalogs to born digital catalogs. As of 2023, the catalog describes the university's founding by claiming UTEP was established in 1914 as the Texas State School of Mines and Metallurgy. 1914 being the year the Board of Regents of the University of Texas formally accepted the school as part of the University of Texas system. As with previous histories, the catalog provided no specific dates for either the creation or establishment of the school. Outside of the catalogs, however, the creation date narrative began to change as the university approached its 50th anniversary. In 1962, a local bank donated a bronze historical marker to the citizens of El Paso commemorating the founding of the university, then known as Texas Western College of the University of Texas. Located on El Paso's scenic drive overlooking the Paso del Norte, the marker reads, "In 1913, the Texas legislature authorized the establishment of the School of Mines and Metallurgy as a branch of the University of Texas at El Paso." 2 years later, Francis Fugate, a professor of English at the university, wrote Frontier College, the first monograph history of the institution. Fugate told this account of the creation of the university. On April 16, 1913, an act creating the State School of Mines and Metallurgy became law. However, he followed this passage with, "The 33rd Legislature approved the new school for the purpose of teaching the scientific knowledge of mining and metallurgy in the state of Texas." Taken together, these two paragraphs could lead some readers to believe it was the legislature that acted on April 16, 1913, and not the governor. As we all learned in grade school and from watching Schoolhouse Rock, legislatures pass bills and governors approve bills. The first print media source to interpret the creation date was the school's own newspaper, The Prospector. On November 13, 1964, the student newspaper wrote, "Texas Western College of the University of Texas was created by the state legislature on April 16, 1913. With this, a flawed creation story entered the mainstream." 2 years later, Laura Thomas, a clerk in the City of El Paso's planning office, repeated this defective claim. In October 1966, she added her own history of the school in a pamphlet published by the City of El Paso titled "A Short History of Northeast El Paso." Thomas wrote, "The legislature created the State School of Mines and Metallurgy on April 16, 1913. Over the next 2 decades, conflicting accounts of the school's creation date appeared in El Paso's newspapers. No one seemed to pay this any mind. An opportunity to set the record straight came in 1988 under President Diana Natalicio when the university was planning its 75th anniversary, which would take place the following year. Nancy Hamilton, a writer with the university's Marketing and Communications Office, wrote her own history of the school. In her book, UTEP, A Pictorial History of the University of Texas at El Paso, Hamilton described the school's creation writing, "The bill was adopted unanimously by the Senate and on March 26, 1913 was passed by the House. Governor O.B. Colquitt signed the act into law on April 16, 1913. Nancy Hamilton, using unnamed sources, got the date right. Her achievement, however, would be short-lived. The following year, the university all but ignored Hamilton's research, choosing to rely on a defective claim. How was this possible? Meet Wilbert Timmons. Proclaimed Mr. History by the Texas State Historical Association, Timmons was a University of Chicago trained historian who joined UTEP's history department in 1949. In 1989, he held the title of Professor Emeritus with UTEP's history department. Over his illustrious career, Timmons had published some of the most important histories of El Paso and the Paso del Norte region. Further boosting his credibility, Timmons supported El Paso heritage by sponsoring historical markers throughout the city. If anyone was going to nail UTEP's history, it would be Mr. History. Only this time, he didn't. For some reason, Timmons chose not to rely on primary sources as he had done with his other research. It was Timmons who wrote the line claiming the university was approved by the state legislature on April 16, 1913. No one at the time pointed out the date on Timmons' historical marker conflicted with that in Nancy Hamilton's book. While both Timmons and Hamilton's claims lacked sources, Timmons' ethos, his credibility as an emeritus professor of history, prevailed over Hamilton's credentials as a journalist. The University of Texas at El Paso is caught between a plaque and a hard place. The university's history consists of two competing realities. One of them must be wrong. Though universities like UTEP are places of scholarship and repositories of knowledge, they wield enormous control over which reality fits their version of their own history. There are several reasons why a top-tier research university would choose one reality over another. Most of them revolve around maintaining an idolized self-image. This often leads to a condition known as simplification. It's much simpler for a university to do nothing when its own publicity conflicts with its own public history. This conflict is a rhetorical distance. Rhetorical distances appear when defective claims alter reality. The perfect time to cure a rhetorical distance is during an anniversary, also known as a jubilee. A jubilee provides an opportunity for a university to celebrate what it does best: scholarship. Unfortunately, UTEP's 75th anniversary only made things worse. UTEP have corrected its history only to reject it the following year. The university got a second chance in 2014 during its 100th anniversary jubilee, once again under President Diana Natalicio. And it did just that. The marker, originally mounted on a large rock in the center of campus, was removed and placed in storage to make way for a campus renovation project. President Natalicio appointed historian Keith Erickson to re-examine the university's timeline, which uncovered the date discrepancy. In 2014, the university corrected the record and once again recognized April 16, 1913 as the anniversary of its creation when Senate Bill No. 183 became law. It no longer described this date as the day the legislature created the university. The university's communication office wrote stories featuring the recovered date. But things change. Within a year, the university moved on from its celebration and set aside the centennial research. The 1989 historical marker was reinstalled, this time in a prominent place under the flagpole. The president who had commissioned the original centennial research retired. A new administration lacking institutional memory took charge of the university's history. In 2022, the university once again returned to claiming April 16, 1913 as the day the legislature approved the bill creating the University of Texas at El Paso, just in time for the 110th anniversary of the university's creation. Universities are bastions of research and depositories of knowledge. When they neglect their own history, they undermine their own ethos or credibility. Universities that emphasize publicity over public history ignore the peer review process, the bread and butter of academic research. When two historical narratives conflict, the universal university default mode is simplification, frequently choosing to do nothing to avoid bringing attention to the issue. This series of videos will help colleges and universities reclaim their histories by seeing their narratives as public histories and not just publicity. To learn more about the rhetorics of history, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you have any questions on writing university histories, be sure to leave them in the comments below. I'm the Barefoot Rhetorician. You've been watching the Rhetorics of History.